And one thing that I have to just wonder, looking at this election and how things turned out, I know this question you're probably going to get a lot, but were the polls wrong? Because it showed that this was a very close race, but the end result wasn't at all that close.
So here's my view of the polls. The polls in 2016, again in 2020, and apparently in 2024 continue to underestimate Trump voters and they undercount them and Republicans. Now, is that because pollsters don't want to talk to Republicans, don't want to talk to Trump supporters? Not at all. That's not why. But there's an underlying factor as to who's more willing to take a poll. And folks who are distrustful of government, they're distrustful of the political system, perhaps distrustful of expertise. They are the ones who are less likely to stay on the phone and talk to a pollster. Get that email and click the link and go ahead and complete the whole survey. All right. So it remains a challenge. And I think the polling industry will do a lot of reflection going forward to try to continue to correct. Now, I will say that there is such a thing as momentum in the end. And there is such a thing as an undecided that not necessarily 100%, but tends to break toward a certain candidate. So not some of those factors, it's rare that certainly any single poll would just nail it. That doesn't really happen. There are snapshots, etc. Then you combine that with Republicans' lower willingness than Democrats and independents to do polls, and with the challenge that faces pollsters to try to estimate and make sure that they get a sample. Let's say it's 1,000 Michigan voters, as a for instance. What should that proper mix of Democrats, independents, and Republicans be? Guess what? We don't have the answer until after the election is over. Then we know what the composition is. So there's all this, I have a colleague in my department, David Jackson, and he says polling is an art more than a science. Yes, there is social science. Yes, there is the theory of drawing a random sample. But with the challenges we face today, there's some art to doing it as well. And I think pollsters are going to continue to try to get it right. It doesn't mean that polls are a useless endeavor, but I think they're just generally what they provide is a general sense of those important issues, right? They provide a general sense of which groups candidates are doing better or worse among, right? So we knew going into it that Donald Trump did better among men and didn't do as well among women. Although it turns out, right, we thought there'd be a huge gender gap in terms of women. What really ended up mattering was men breaking for Donald Trump. Now, some of that from the polls we knew. We also knew that less educated voters were more likely to vote for Donald Trump and support Donald Trump in those polls heading into it, whereas college educated were more likely to say they would vote for Kamala Harris. And in the exit polls that have been available in the battleground states, Ohio wasn't one of them this year. So we don't have Ohio exit poll information. But if you look at the exit polls from the other states, that's what the exit polls are pointing toward, and certainly the results.